All right, guys, we are probably visible or audioly interpreted now. People can hear us now. So yeah, look at everybody's on here. Let me get Jeff on here, and then so far it's handling 5 streams no problem, which is pretty awesome. Um, Brandon, if you want to take off and get this thing started, I'm gonna finish adding Jeff in here, and then I'm gonna go grab my beverage for the night, and we'll get to it. All right? Ooh, nice. We have Daniel right above you. 2 seconds. Daniel, Daniel, can you not hear us anymore, buddy? Uh oh. We lost Daniel? Oh, he's back. We got an echo though.
Is that better?
That sounds better.
All right.
A little bit. Okay.
We'll guess.
So, as for tonight, we're going to be talking about a little bit getting into racing. Essentially, we're going to talk to. We're going to be talking about a little bit getting into racing. Essentially, we're going to talk to. I don't know. I have my phone muted, but.
Not me.
Or my laptop muted.
Why is this?
I don't know. I have my phone muted, but I know. Someone said that they can't hear me. My laptop muted.
Yeah, I think we're having difficulties again with.
I know. No worries.
Oh, there's Jeffrey.
Hi.
All right, I'll be right back. I'm gonna see if I can sort out the audio stuff. Hi. So you guys can everyone can hear everyone except for the people who are listening to us.
Oh.
Yeah, so we can all hear each other, but I'm seeing that other people are not hearing. So that's always fun. I'm looking through to see if I can sort
you want
that
the
out.
audience to be able to hear you.
It would be best if the audience can hear us. They say cannot hear Brandon and cannot hear anyone
we don't
but
need
Robbie.
an hour of bad lip reading.
Oh, it's working now, Matt says. Okay, cool. I'll be right back. Bye.
Okay. So we're working now. So, but tonight we're going to be talking about safety equipment. We're going to be talking about how to get into driving on track and everything, which everybody here really knows how to get out on track and actually just start doing it. And then I did see Mr. Mazda asked about my fruity beer. Don't worry, I have them in the fridge. We're gonna do that later. Um, but yeah. So yes, Coyote's got his beer. No, right now I'm on the pink lemonade.
This is the Seneca Lodge koozie, man. You got to earn that. I wrecked a whole car for that.
Oh, that's an expensive koozie. I have an expensive jacket, which was my what was it? The regional championship for Arizona for Honda Challenge. That was an expensive jacket.
Did they charge you for it?
No, but the entire year was expensive.
That was my joke because you said regional.
Fair.
See.
All right, so as we wanted to get started, getting started into racing, into going to tracks, is really just as simple as finding a organization near you that does it and signing up. I know you guys have all had the fun of joining and whatnot, which really most of them have helmets if you don't want to bring your own, but you're always welcome to get your own helmet. Ravi here can help you figure out which one is good for you.
Yeah.
But the big thing is you really just got to find somewhere around you. NASA is actually national. There's a lot of other ones that aren't national, but you can find something near you for most tracks. Usually, I mean, if you know of a track near you, you can probably call them and they'll tell you who sets it up so that you can just go and run with them. As for safety and other stuff you got to know, Jeff, if you would like to tell everyone essentially good do's and don'ts for your first time out track.
I just want to point out that all I could find was a 40 tonight, so.
All right. Well, while Jeff is talking too, I'm going to go grab mine.
Awesome.
First time out is always fraught because it seems like everybody who wants to get into the track experience, seems like it's more often than not they come to it with an idea of how it's going to go and how many mods their car needs and all this gear they want to buy and all this stuff they want to add and all these things that they think that they really need to try it out. And honestly, the best way to start is with the biggest piece of crap that you can get to the track that rolls.
RX-7.
No, RX-7.
No. RX-8.
Well, that would be the biggest piece. Well, the problem with the RX-7 is getting it to the track might be a problem, but it may not show up. But no, I mean anything that you can drive to the track that will pass whatever the safety regs are for the organization you're running with would be a good place to start. Leave home your ideas of the equipment that you need to be fast and the tires you prefer to run and the horsepower that you think you'll need and all those things, because they'll honestly do you zero good. I mean, there's always somebody that shows up the track that has natural talent. There's always going to be people like that are better naturally equipped than others, but even for them, that first track experience is really about getting past the overwhelming amount of knowledge that you need to absorb just to be safe, let alone fast.
So,
go.
Like I mean, we've been doing this. I mean, we met each other, like 09, I think, roughly, someplace around there.
Yeah, you and I met in
Actually, I think Brendan
09.
we still don't know when Brendan and I met. We've been trying to figure that out for the last 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Right.
But we don't. It feels like it was around there. Anyways, my point is that I don't know how many times in the last 20 years I have seen people show up in these track prepped cars, and then you get some guy with a Miata who literally blows their doors off, and they don't understand why.
Yeah.
So I think we all agree here the best way to get out and go tracking is just take a stockish car with probably just brake pads, brake fluid, and maybe a decent tire, not a race tire, just a decent tire, 200 tread wear, and not the crazy 200 tread wears. A normal RS4, SO4 street tire.
You know,
I would honestly argue that you want to get on track with the least drippy thing you can possibly find that won't kill you.
Cutters. Yeah.
that's where I'm at. So actually, for those of you, there's also autocross out there, which autocross is much cheaper, much easier to get into. Less time, less damage to your car. Like it's just you out on track. It's all that stuff, right? And years ago, me and my business partner Fred, which I know people on the U-Wrench side know Fred, and most of you do too. Me and Fred took a rental car I had to autocross. We both co-drove it. We went through, bubbled the tire, overheated the transmission, but it was a rental car. Just gave it back and happy day.
Daniel, how did you start?
Me? Well, I guess leading off when you talked about cars, I don't know if you remember when you came to VIR for the time attack or the Ultimate Track Car Challenge. So I've already was a PCA instructor, so I did the NASA instructor clinic. So I had 2 students. One of my beginner or novice class students was an older gentleman, and he had an 09 Toyota Corolla automatic, and he had a blast in it.
Yeah, actually, I remember, I think Ravi and Jeff might remember, there was a time, I think it was Pro Auto Sports, in, I think it was Red Group. There was a Prius, like just a straight white Prius, along with a 458 Italia.
I got a one up for you on that. Just
Fair.
it's the only thing that can one up that. We had Rusty Wallace's old NASCAR out at Track Night in America with a Honda Ridgeline.
A Ridge, you can't. I will say I have taken my SUV on Indy, but it was to
me
get to
too.
a port. Yeah.
me too.
I've been on Indy, but it didn't end well. We might get into that later.
You know, the last time I was there was not the greatest, and me and Robbie are going back this Saturday, but I'm going to be calm. We're just going.
You're racing at Indy?
No,
We're driving.
Different Indy. You're talking about Indianapolis.
well,
I am
Motorsports.
DE.
Oh.
Don't forget,
Yeah, sorry.
these guys.
I'm
here,
from the
they're
East Coast.
So.
Most people probably understood what you meant. We have our smaller track over here.
Okay, I'm from Pittsburgh, guys. So yeah, everything's through a filter for me.
Fair.
So I'm 3 hours more beers
so
too, by the way.
Daniel and Coyote are 3 hours ahead of us, so they're about ready to go to bed probably.
Well, thank you guys for joining us.
I work night shift, so.
There you go.
Oh, that works.
What I wanted, so we talk about getting into motorsports. Obviously, NASA is a great option. Every area has some sort of club racing or some type that you can get into and join into. A lot of people, the question always is, how do I go do time attack, or how do I go do wheel-to-wheel racing? And then trying to explain to them that there's kind of a process. Unless you're a prodigy and excellent at driving, there's just a
And a lot of money.
And a lot of money. We got somebody who's already past 9 o'clock in Michigan. Yeah, thanks for staying up.
Oh, wow.
Before I go any further, what do you think of that beer, Brandon?
I guess I will open it now.
Oh,
I have not yet.
Oh, wow.
I was waiting a sec. It's still cold.
It's still cold. I mean, all I could find was Blue Moon, so I mean, that's.
But what did you
smells
think
like
of
beer to
it?
me.
What did you think of it though before?
Yeah, what did you think of the can?
Did you think it would be good?
The
It was
can
pretty
is
good?
cool.
The
The can is definitely really cool.
I believe it's from Lake Havasu, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Somewhere on there it says that.
How's it taste, though? Brandon hates beer, by the way.
I do.
Oh, good.
Well, so one of the last times I had beer was actually at Jeff's house.
Hi, puppy.
One night before a race, and I knew I needed to go to bed. And I was like, I'll take one.
Just take one.
So-
Go. That's a terrible.
If I remember correctly, it was more than one.
No, it was one. You
It was
had more
one.
than one.
Maybe I had more than one.
Although he has this nice beer fridge and orange and all that stuff. So
All the girly frou beer stuff.
I will like, it's beery, which is like my biggest problem. I do get the blueberry though.
So is that
Which
on
is-
a scale of 1 to 10? Where are we at on this?
10 being I love it.
Yes.
I don't know, like a 2 or 3.
Oh my God.
Oh man.
Jesus
I think that's just mostly because it's beer, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, this is gonna be a long.
I
show
mean,
if we can't stop and tell.
If I don't have Pepsi, this is my choice.
Oh my God. So Jeff, we're trying
Guys,
to find him a beer
we're-
he actually
yeah.
likes over the course of the next year. If that's
I'll-
a 2, I don't.
I'll
even
drink
know
more
where to
of
go
it.
from there. If it was like a 5, I think we were making some progress, but 2 is rough.
I mean, it's the beer part. Like the blueberry, I love, but you got to get through the beer stuff, which I don't like.
So Miller Lite.
I'll send you some beers from the East Coast, man. Don't worry.
Get us some Yingling.
Yingling.
Over there, man. Yeah, yes.
I have Yingling. I'm in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
I'm in the heartland. Yeah.
You know,
Mac.
What-
I have a
what's the stuff
bulldog
they
that's
making with
knocking my
Pro?
setup over.
Hey,
so
what's the beer? What's the Rolling Rock? That's what you
Rolling
Oh,
Rock.
Rolling Rocks, dog shit. We have Iron City.
There
Yeah.
was one of my customers brought me a beer from Pennsylvania, and it was like some micro brew place that only makes it for like 3 weeks.
We have
and
a
it
lot
had,
of
like-
those.
It
That
had,
doesn't
like,
even narrow it down.
Okay, fair. It was very strong.
Still.
Okay.
So we
Yeah.
don't have.
I'm gonna bring you some stouts.
So next time you guys come out here, like I'm trying. You need to come out and do Podium Club with us, Coyote.
What is Podium Club?
Podium Club is a large members-only track, but they do have open track days as well. But it's quite easy to get people on there if you have members that are already going. So.
Can you get me in?
Yeah. It's gonna take a little slap.
All right, perfect. Yeah, perfect.
But
I have words. I have words about things we said too. I have to not forget. But we said some things about getting into racing. I want to get back into.
Well, this was your first year in UTCC. Is that correct?
This is my first year into pro racing. Yeah.
Yeah, because you 3 years ago you were doing amateur stuff just like the rest of us, and you have really pushed and dedicated your entire lifestyle around getting to these different goals. I mean.
Well, actually, so you and we're in the same boat because I don't remember how I met you.
Oh man.
It's
because
just racing.
I remember
that's
how
all.
I
That's all that matters.
Jeff, I remember because that was at Maine, and we had beef for some reason. Like, I have no idea why. But for some reason, we did not like each other for a while, and then we discovered we both were intellectuals, and it was like, oh, this is great. It's not talking to a wall, because I think we just assume everyone's completely, an idiot sometimes.
Safe assumption.
At reserving my thought process until they've proven that they're an idiot. Now I let them open their mouth first, and then I go, And I've discovered there's not as many people as idiots as I thought I was, so I feel like I've grown. And
I think you introduced me to Mike.
I did to Sayers. I probably just was like on some forum and probably sold you something.
Guaranteed. So, my experience in this whole thing might be a little different than a lot of people because I had never seen a racetrack or watched racing on TV or done anything related remotely to racing until my driver's school. So I went to go get my full comp license, having never seen a racetrack or watched racing or done any of that in my entire life.
How big are the rocks in Pennsylvania?
Oh, well, wait, no, never mind. Yeah, so I played Forza, like that's what I did, and I was like, this is pretty cool. What does it take to do this in real life? And I looked it up, and no offense to anyone watching, but I didn't want to do autocross. I didn't want to do time trial. I was like, I want to do Forza stuff. What do we got to do? So I built my Integra in 3 months, and I went to driver's school. We ended up winning the championship the first year, and I still have that car to this day. It just sold, and next year we'll be into Porsche. And Robbie, from day one, probably because it was a crappy Integra, was like, I gotta help.
I felt really bad for him. I really did.
But you hooked me up with Mike Sayers, who's still on the team to this day.
I'm so happy that you guys are buddies. Like I said, he's one of the few guys I still occasionally catch up with. I've been super bad at keeping up with the Type R guys since business took over.
You should have bought his car.
I wanted to, dude. I actually tried to get. I can't remember where I was going. I think I was going to Hawaii, but when you told me about it, so I was trying to get a loan on an airplane. That was not exactly the easiest thing to do. So I kind of just ran out of steam, and then it was sold. So I'm happy that it found a new home. I've always wanted a Type R, but.
I sold the Type R and my race car for a price that would make everyone throw up, probably. I don't even want to say it, but...
I mean, this is the time to do so.
35 for both.
Wow. Someone did pretty
Yeah.
Daniel, Daniel's over there. Daniel,
Yeah.
So you told me you're actually doing a new company. It used to be S's Auto Works, which is where I knew you through and through Type R Expo, and it sounds like you've started up a new company recently. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
I mean, it's kind of unofficial, underground, just because, I decided to go along, I guess, another career path.
Okay.
So I'm in the military with the Guard, and during running S's, between like hurricanes and other duty, I decided to close it down because I wanted to, have a business I could retire from. The market here is a little different than obviously the West Coast and stuff like that. So I actually got into law enforcement. That's my new, gig. So I think it was last year, I finally built a shop behind the house, and that's actually seems like I've been busier doing stuff in there than when I had S's. So it's kind of worked out.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, that's definitely. I mean, dude, every day I think ever since I've opened the shop, I've actually thought about closing the shop just about every single day. To be honest.
Oh yeah.
It's as you know, it's just an absolute insane amount of work, and what we deal with is insane. I literally bitched. I mentioned a car that came in that was dropped off yesterday on a tow
Mhm.
truck, and I didn't have time to check it or look at it. It was just dropped off. It was here when we essentially got here. They're unloading it, and I went to go today to just scan codes, and there was a half-eaten cheeseburger under the dash, shoved up under the
Mhm.
dash, and it had been there for at least 3 weeks. At least 3 weeks, because the car has been non-running for 3 weeks. So that was the last time it potentially was driven anyplace, and it had been sitting in the sun with the windows up.
True.
And I had to take a step back and just. I just could. I'm in disbelief that this. And that was the worst of it. There was other stuff, but that was the worst. There
Yeah.
was French fries and just it was being lived in essentially. And I had to sit back and think: do I really even care about handling this one? Or just call him, pick it up, tell him take it. I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was. I mean, eventually I got a rag and took it out and I cleaned the whole freaking. I'm gonna charge him an hour to clean it. I cleaned the whole passenger compartment so I can work in it, and then I left the windows and the doors open all day because it can't stand the smell. And then I hit the whole thing with a like not Lysol, something. It was something that was COVID-19 rated. I just like the whole thing, the whole car, wiped the whole thing down just to plug in the OBD2 scanner. Now, when I posted that on Facebook, I actually had a couple people being like, "Oh, you should clean your shop if you're gonna be that anal about it." I'm like, no, because my shop is clean enough to work in. There's no oil spills.
You know,
like that. It's not.
Ravi.
I don't bring my shop to you. You come here voluntarily, so you don't have to come.
Right.
It's that
But
simple.
the people who said that would be the ones to bring you a car with a half-eaten cheeseburger shoved under the seat.
I feel like that's
Mhm.
accurate, but I also like at the same time I was like there's a couple people who mentioned it. I'm like, first off, y'all never been here, so I don't really care. Like that's your opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From
Like a lot of people
once,
like like our restroom here, it's not dirty by any means, like there's nothing like wrong with it, but it's from like the 60s. I just recently put like new mirrors and lights in it just to update a little bit, but it still has like crappy green paint and the floor is a crappy vinyl tile thing. They're terrible and I'd love to replace them, but my priorities are elsewhere in the shop with tooling and gear and trying to keep stuff actually in the shop available for sale, which has been the hardest thing to do. Probably crappy car around it. Yeah.
Speaking of stuff for you to sell, though,
Yeah.
I think we should get back to what safety stuff people would need for track.
before we do that,
Segway.
one note from a guy who is also a small business owner that works inside people's mouths for a living. I can relate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you floss
Yeah.
before you came in? I'm just wondering.
The answer is no.
The answer is a straight sound.
Universally, that's a no. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, what Brandon was talking about safety. So this question comes up all the time. I'm sure to everybody who's ever been driving, which a new person asks, what's the right amount of safety gear? How much should I spend? What do I need? Do I need it at all? Daniel, what do you think?
When do I go to the extreme?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you start off with the helmet.
That's a good place.
If you like, I think you're usually gonna like it after your first, event.
Right.
or your
I don't
first
see a
track
lot of
day, even
people,
if it's
like,
a-
doing one event and bailing.
Yeah, I mean, it's very few and far between. And I mean, I think a student would. I've been probably instructed more with PCA than NASA, just because back at that time frame, their schedule worked out better.
Mm.
But I mean, my first student that I had with PCA, he only chose to do like the Saturday, and he kind of regretted it. He wished he had the whole weekend. So
Right.
I know you. I think doing so offer like rental helmets, I think that helps out getting people on track, at least for that first time.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I don't think buying a helmet even the first time, like for yourself, is that necessary. Like
Yeah.
most places offer rentals, like our NASA Arizona does. I stopped doing rentals because NASA has them, which makes my life a lot easier. I
True,
usually
yeah.
try to, like you said, I ask people like go to your first event, see what you think. Most people are hooked to like cocaine, so there's really not an issue with that. I don't think.
Yeah.
So I'm like, when somebody's like, "Oh, I want to buy a helmet for my first time," I'm like, "Yeah, go for it." There's very little chance that you're not going to enjoy the sport. It's a very welcoming sport most places you go, with the exception of SEC. I'm looking at you,
The other
Anthony.
thing too is with your when you join, right? It doesn't mean that you have to go wheel to wheel and start banging tires.
No.
You can. There's so many different levels of driving on a racetrack or driving aggressively you can do And I've met many people that just go out in beginner, and they've been doing it for like 3 or 4 years because that's all they want to do.
If you have a good time doing DE, that's fine, and it's important to understand that. The thing that's important to understand, though, is that the safety gear preparation is not really based on what type of driving you're doing. It's how often you're doing it. To me, that's the key. If you're going to drive once a year, sure, your car could burst into flames one of those 12 times over the next 12 years, but it's pretty unlikely. Versus if you're driving 12 to 15 times a year, or like I'm driving 2 to 3 times a month usually, the chances of me having something terrible happen are, to me, infinitely higher because I'm literally putting myself at risk more times in the same amount of time space. So it makes more sense to be more prepared if you're doing something more often. Like, that's the way I look at it. There's no right or wrong answer to how much safety gear you should have. If you want to have all the safety gear on the planet for your HPD1 event, fine, knock yourself out. There's nothing bad that can happen from that. There's absolutely no downside to that at all. The chances of you needing it that first event, very, 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 very low, right? I mean, we can all agree on that. Usually your first event, you're not going as fast as, say, when you're doing DE3. I've always kind of viewed it as a bit of a bell curve. When you're a beginner, there's very low risk because you're still learning, you're getting up to speed. As you start learning, I think the risk to me seems to go up. Like DE2, early DE3, I see more people spinning and having incidents then because they've done a few events and they're pushing the limits, but they still don't understand the dynamics well enough to keep out of trouble. Usually not
good
issues,
old
usually crashing issues.
Good old Dunning-Kruger on that one.
Yes. And then I think DE3, you start to see people taper off. They've started to figure out their car. They've started to figure out how to drive. So then you don't see them spinning around as much. And then DE4 time trials, it starts going back down in terms of collisions and avoidable contact. Avoidable contact. Again, snapped tie rod end, can't do anything about that. Failed brakes, really can't do much about that. These things are just going to happen. Tire goes flat, going to happen. Like that guy on the Camaro, his airbag went off in his face. Going to happen, Like, there's just stuff that's going to happen, and that's the whole point of preparing with safety gears because it's for the stuff that you can't prevent. It's not to prevent. It's not really there to catch you with so much against your own personal errors because we're all going to make mistakes. I did one. This is my 18th year driving. I did one last November and totaled my car. Like it's going to happen. I had a Hans on, and I just walked out of the car, and I was like, I'm great, no problem at all. I didn't feel that at all. And then the fire thing is the other thing is when you start racing and doing a lot of driving, you've got old rubber, you've got stuff getting really hot. Especially, I see more fires on older cars, obviously, because we've got parts that are wearing out, tired,
and more modified cars.
Yeah. Yep. And highly modified cars. But again, my only fire I ever had was on a completely stock car. And then, remember, Jeff, when your car caught on fire because of a piece of paper under the carpet? Wasn't that what it was? Like a piece of paper went under the carpet?
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with fuel or oil. It just a piece of paper got too hot on the floorboard of your car and then lit it on fire. So
It was a piece of paper that wasn't even in the car to get into the session. It came in on the carousel.
So that's what I'm saying.
That's just the preparing thing.
I can't say that there's no right or wrong time to start preparing for these type of things because it's all preparing for stuff like Jeff's where it just happens and there's no way to prevent it. And if you don't have preparation for it, you are basically allowing the consequences to happen, and you're just going to have to deal with it one way or the other. Whether it's personal damage or medical damage, there's stuff that can happen. So I've always felt it's much more affordable for me to spend money, over 6 or 8 months, making sure everything's up to date and in good shape, and that it's there when I need it. And then the rest of the time it's just there, which is great. That's my personal philosophy about it, and everybody asks me when they come in the store, what should I buy? I'm like, I would buy all of it, but buy it at a rate that you're comfortable with. If you're going to start doing this a lot, start prioritizing safety gear over your coilovers, or over your race tires, over all the other things that you have to buy that don't affect your safety.
So I have a really good note on that too. Teaching Track Night in America, and I do HPD stuff here too. Not NASA. It's through the track, so I understand your DE levels are the same as ours, but students ask me, and you can't overdo safety. You can always underdo, but you can't possibly overdo safety in a race car. That's just not a thing. So don't worry about it. You're not going to look like a fool for overdoing safety because you can't overdo safety. My biggest peeve normally, and this is just from teaching at the track night, doing a lot of stuff where I see a lot of street cars on track, is not under or overdoing safety, because again, you can't overdo safety. It's haphazardly doing safety that doesn't work together. Things like if I see harnesses in a street car with no Hans, that's something.
Or reclinable seat.
Right. So there's always things. So I'll always pull that student aside and be like, "Do you understand how this system is supposed to work together?" Right? Because these things are supposed to be all in a line to work together. If you're missing one single piece, you've actually made your car more dangerous by not understanding the process.
Yeah,
And that's something that we really miss a lot of in this. And that's a lot of people that I refer to Ravi, and I just go, I'm too busy. You should just talk to him. Here's his thing. Here's his thing. He loves when you Facebook message him. Yeah, he loves personal Facebook messages about work. Just ask him about it. But it's the truth. But the real truth is, send an email to somebody who knows. Because if you have a harness and you have a bar and you don't have a Hans, you really need to think about the chain of command a little bit, right? Because have you made your car more or less safe? Because your head is now the pivot point. Things like that are the biggest thing that I see teaching beginner groups and track nights and things like that. Because these guys have a lot. I mean, at track night we have guys with serious power at these events. I'm sure you do too at your entry level.
For a second. Can you try pulling your mic back about a couple, like an inch or two? See, I think we're getting a little bit of percussion. Try that out a little further away.
Too many beers. So, but my point is across, I think. So, that's the thing that I see the most of, and that's the thing that I try to work with people the most on.
I do actually want to talk about what Coyote was talking about, because it is very important actually knowing, the tiers, or essentially it's one of the things, if you put a harness in a car, there's like a actual 5-point seatbelt harness. There's so many other things that are actually required to make that harness safe. But I know we've said a bunch of it, and I figured we'd at least explain for people who haven't been there. I know for us, DE is just, we know what that is. But as you go to events, you don't just go out and start racing and bumping bumpers and doors and all that other stuff. You go out and they have different tiers of class, which is essentially novice. I've never done this before. I want to go home with the car that I brought here. And then all the way up to where me, Ravi, Jeff, and most of us go, which is race group, and I brought a trailer because there's a chance I might tow this home.
Well, there's definitely a chance.
Right? And so
it's actually a certainty for me.
That's true. I haven't seen it go home, but I'd sell out a trailer.
Yeah. But so HPDE is High Performance Drivers Education, which is essentially what all of the racing organizations do. And so DE1, 2, 3, 4 is kind of normal, where they have the 4 different ones, novice, beginner, intermediate, advanced. And so you work your way up before you even get to a place where you're in a competition.
Your
so
set should match. You should be ready. You will be prepared for that via just driving and getting some seat time, as we all say, seat time. Don't be in a rush to get to here, because if you get there unprepared, you're not going to have a good time in many different ways. As long as you don't
actually, it was
that's a good point.
Wily Coyote said,
I have the opposite perspective on this, because, and I think that's kind of cool for the podcast, because I never did any of that, because you can absolutely just go, you can absolutely do that. And that's the thing. But if you don't have the right people, like if I didn't have Robbie to help me, who knows, I mean, it is, I've always been of this mindset where you don't have to do anything but just go do it, So I like to have this unique perspective too, along with you guys, that because I never got to do it, and now actually I think I would have benefited greatly from being able to to come up and like learn how to drive outside of wheel to wheel because I went straight to banging wheels.
Coyote, you don't know that, but I actually didn't have a license for my first several races. So I actually took it. Yes, I know. I'm not going to name which organization because it's not one that all of us know of, but I actually, my first 3 races did not involve licensing. It involved a race director going, "You're pretty quick. Your car's legal. Get out there." I'm like, "All right." that happened. That was
I was told the same thing with a certain organization as well.
Organization that we won't name.
Really?
But I was, I think, just signed off out of DE2. I was in DE3. So I understand that. I really didn't do any DE3 or DE4 for the most part. I went back and did them later because I enjoyed it as an experience, and I did learn a lot because I think my first race out, I actually placed 3rd out of 6. But it was
nice.
It was purely because the other 3 guys behind me, they were not. I had more experience than them, which was terrifying.
That's usually how it goes, though, too. Yeah, that sounds right.
Had gone through comp school and they were gone. They knew what they were doing. I remember the first time because I remember a guy coming up behind me and my brain went into HPD mode. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna point him by. Whoa! Don't point him by. You're racing. Like my brain had.
Hey, Robbie.
Yeah.
Were you ever part of the DE5 group back at PIR?
Sure was.
Okay, so the thing about the DE levels thing that Brandon was going on about there, which works the way it's supposed to work until it doesn't.
Right.
A lot of the what ends up crossing into where Coyote's coming from about just going out there and doing it is absolutely correct. I mean, I'm pretty much. Other than the highly organized groups that don't like that because the revenue stream's not part of it, if you just go and do it, you can just go and do it. But there's a lot of things, good things can come out of going through those levels and trying it out that way. And some people are like Coyote is like they just want to go out there and effing do it, right?
Right.
For some of us, that wasn't part of the plan. I mean, I know for me personally, it wasn't.
What about Maldonado? Do you think Maldonado did DE4?
No.
I don't think so either. I don't think Maldonado made it through DE4.
I don't think he even showed up for DE1.
I don't think he showed up for the drivers' meeting.
But actually, you know what? So because I was driving with another organization called Pro Auto, and that's where I know Jeff from. And some friends of mine were like, hey, you should come to NASA and get through all of their stuff and then start driving Honda Challenge. And I was like, okay. So I reached out, talked to the owner of NASA, and I was just like, hey, do I have to start in DE1 or can I go somewhere else? And he let me come in 3. And that day I came out and Robbie was running DE3 at that time.
Was I?
Yeah.
Well, I was driving then. I wasn't running it yet.
No, you were, because I remember we did the door-to-door thing, and you and Nas drove next to each other.
I can't believe I've been doing that crap that long now. That's terrifying, because that means this was like 2013 or 2014 then.
It was 14, yeah.
Wow.
And so my first day out, I had driven on track for like 3 or 4 years prior, and we went to DE3, and in DE3 they actually did a drill, which I had never experienced. It was just go out and drive on the track, and the drill was literally drive next to somebody. You got to pick your buddy. You didn't get forced to pick who you had to drive next to, but you had to drive next to someone the entire track, no matter what, at like, I think you said like 70 or
5 or 6 tenths usually, back
for DE3, yeah. So it wasn't like we were, hauling butt. We were just driving.
It's a great
car being there. And then you switch after one lap.
At some point, I was a great HPD3 instructor. At some point.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but it was great years ago.
That was many years ago. I can't believe it was almost a decade ago, though.
Yeah.
So, I think, like I said, this is interesting. So, all of us have had pretty different experiences on how we got on track and how we went through it, and different attitudes and different cars. And this is cool to see that there's actually, we all took very different steps to get here, actually.
Yeah.
But it all comes
Yeah.
down to one thing, which is all of us got a lot of seat time before we built our race cars. We all did a lot of driving.
Yeah. So
Well,
going through
not
the
me.
levels, someone commented. They said going through the levels helps curb evos or egos.
You know how many enemies I've made?
I will say though, I've actually dealt with people who did all of the steps, and I don't know why their ego is so great for driving so slow with what they brought. But the levels don't help everyone.
No, it's
It
it's
does-
just like school. You got to get into what you put into it. Whatever, you won't get anything out unless you put a bunch into it and really soak it up.
Correct.
Just like anything
And-
else, education is like it's a choice. We have the choice to be educated. It's not going to be forced upon you if you don't want to, enjoy it.
And I'm sure
Very
Coyote
well
had a
put.
similar experience when he first, literally just showed up and went to race group. Because my first race group experience, I went through a corner and I was like, wow, that was really good. Like, I came through this corner really fast. And then the guy in front of me was still pulling away from me. And I was like, hold on, we're in the same class.
That reminds me, actually,
Yeah.
when Daniel and I were at Road America, that's the one that we went to first, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually
Yes.
have a video of, because I went out the advanced group. Remember, the advanced group, we're still not allowed to pass in the corners. It's still point buys everywhere. There's a video out there of me catching someone and starting to pass them around the outside of Speedway, the big fast oval, and then I remembered and then slowed back down, like, oops. And, because they were in a supercharged NSX, and I had no chance of catching them on the straight, so I just started to drive around them on the outside,
Mhm.
and then I just got back in line and caught him in the braking zone because it's that seat time thing, and everyone's very different skill levels, and understanding that is important. That knowing, like I could have just gone around him, but knowing that he probably wasn't expecting me there, or he wouldn't have been going quite as slow. He's he's in the same group as me, but he's on a different path than I am, and understanding that and being aware of that and appreciating that is important, I think.
Actually, one of my last times driving DE4, because since I haven't actually raced, I still went out and did DE4 a few times. It was probably one of the best. What are they? The leader. It was like the best way the leader could have said it. So for everybody, DE4 is pretty much like we're driving pretty much at the pace of TT or a race group. We're just not there yet. And we were in DE4. We were doing the download, and someone said that I came up on them and surprised them. And the guy running DE4 looked at them and
Back
said,
to 3.
"Yeah."
And I
He
was
literally
back to
said, "Like, do you want to go back to 3? Because you're not. If he surprised you, you shouldn't be here."
That reminds me of a certain
True.
Boss 302 that I did that intentionally at Bondurant. I have a tendency to test people when I'm not sure if they're in my group for the right reasons. I remember at Bondurant, which we all know, if you're local, so Bondurant is a very short, it's like 1 mile track, and it has like maybe 3 passing zones, and then all the rest are essentially braking zones that you have to pass into the braking zone. There's no other way to pass except the straightaways or the 2 or 3 braking zones. So Maricopa Corner is the place I like to test people's awareness, because if you're driving slowly around this
I like
track,
that corner.
the door's wide open for 250 feet, and I right next to people, and I'll wave at them and then go. And I remember the student came up to me and said, "You dive bombed me." I'm like, I was behind you for 3 laps, and I was very confident in your line because it was way out wide and the door was open. So I thought I'd see if you saw me there, and you didn't. And that's my problem. Is I would at DE3 level, intermediate levels, awareness is actually what we're looking for, not speed. If
Correct.
that person had seen me and said, "Oh yeah, I saw you coming," it'd be like, "Cool, good job." That's all it would have been. It wouldn't have been anything else, because that's the point. Is that intermediate
Robbie,
to advanced driving requires awareness.
is that fair to say at any level?
It is. I mean, really,
Yeah.
outside of that DE1 and 2 levels, where we're really focused on making sure we don't hit what's in front of us, generally speaking, what's behind us is actually more important, because that's the stuff that's
Yep.
more variable. The stuff in front of us generally doesn't change much. That tree's in the same spot. That
Ooh.
corner marker's in the same spot. It's just how it is. Yeah, Brendan.
And that's actually mirrors.
mirrors.
So
Yeah.
having the proper mirror setup.
I always felt that the
Oh, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Oh no, stuttering. I was just saying, it always seemed to me that the 4 levels of DE should have been that first one is going in and being aware of just that you're there and learning to be present. 2 is starting to develop the muscle memory that it takes inside your car to drive it properly. 3 is becoming aware of everyone else around you and employing the things from 1 and 2. And 4 is doing all of those things at speed. So by the time you get up to 4, you've already got the muscle memory from 2. You've learned muscle memory. To me is the biggest thing out of all of this, because you can learn all kinds of cool things and all these stuff that's inside your head and how you're supposed to go into a quarter and where the braking zone is and the entry and exit and all that. But if you can't do that inherently while you're using your brain to be aware of what everyone else is doing, you're not going to be able to put those things together and actually be fast. So 2 always seemed to me the lesson would be in the the NASA system that by the time you get out of 2, you should be able to do all of the car driving blind while your instructor tells you when it's time to turn. I know we never did that, but it's oh yeah, well you did a Stevie Wonder driving school, that by the time you get by the time you're moving to 3, if you can't already have decided the line you're going to take through the corner physically, and what your brain is now occupied with is how can I make that safe while I engage this other driver or set of drivers that are on the track, you may be getting ahead of yourself. I always wish that was more of the system that we use, because I know we've got targets in that, but those 4 steps, DE4 is just learning that all those things you already did now you can do at this elevated pace. If you're not aware or you're not able to select the right gear kind of based on how the car sets and where you've decided to enter and exit a corner, you're probably already in over your head for that level.
Yeah, it's essentially learning how to drive your car to make your car happy.
I wanted to bring up
that's 2. That should be 2.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
So I went to a fairly fun event this last weekend, and I wanted to point out that 18 years later into driving, I still learned a crap ton at this event because it was
nice.
Sure.
It's something that we haven't done in a while. It was a big bank, a big fast bank. It was actually a small one, but it was high elevation. And have you guys been to PPIR yet? Any of you?
Not me.
So
too far.
The track's actually pretty simple, except
which track?
Pikes Peak International.
Oh, Pikes Peak. Yeah, sure.
Speaking of Pikes Peak,
the racetrack. I know you're going to Pikes Peak. I'll see you there whenever you go, buddy. you just let me know. I'll be there.
I thought you meant PIR, Portland International. I didn't know
so PPIR is Pikes Peak International Raceway. It's over. It's near Pueblo. It's where Jeremy Easley's truck and trailer were stolen in Pueblo, like just 2 or 3 or 10 or 15 minutes south of Pikes Peak. But what I was going to point out is what was throwing me off there, and as 18 years, this actually scared me because I just have never experienced. There is a massive speed bump or dip or whatever you want to call it on the Roval that you hit at 100 plus, and you're like fully loaded up, and then you hit it, it goes bang, and I actually got a video of it. I was gonna see if I can pull this up real quick and show you guys, so bear with me. Sorry if everybody's screens disappeared for a second.
Can I preface this with it is always I'm gonna move my mic. Sorry. Is the percussion better on the mic, by the way?
A little bit.
Really? It's like.
It might just be your mic, depending on how cheap it is, because like you move it further away and it's a little rough, but it's just like a percussion and a crackle.
I'll give it one of these.
I also don't have Robbie in my composite here, so.
Oh yeah, you won't see me.
Well, you won't.
Okay.
It's always an asset to be a student, and to always be learning. And that's a good preface.
Yeah, Coyote, you now.
That's such a good attribute to have to what you do. Well, I can't even see it.
I know it's not pulling up. It's really annoying. I'm trying to figure out why it's not behaving for us.
And Bill, I know you asked a question. These guys probably don't know what's going on, but Fred and family are doing better. His baby boy started eating. Granted, it's only when he's sleeping, but he started eating, and Fred will be back at the shop tomorrow.
That's good to hear.
His baby boy started eating. Granted, it's only when he's sleeping, but he started eating.
I'm not familiar, but it sounds like good news. So cheers.
For sure. No, this month has not been good for Fred. He has a 1-year-old who refused to eat for almost 2 weeks.
Maybe he's just a crap cook.
Well,
wow.
All right, where's this bump?
We already passed that. Come back around. It's a short lap.
Okay.
I just turned the volume down on it so it's not blasting everybody. Yeah, sorry everybody with a headphone. You're all gonna really regret that a lot.
Yeah, someone said rest in peace, headphone users.
Yeah, so I got that. I wish I could have pre-queued this, but this racetrack's really quick, 1 minute laps for the fast guys. And it's gonna loop in a second again, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's the very beginning of the video. I haven't quite figured out how to make Catalyst work the way I want it to. So yeah, you jump on this big bank, just like PIR. It's about a 10-degree bank. It's gonna loop again in a second, and I'll show you where this bump is. You'll see it on the camera. It's pretty visible. Well, what the
See,
crap?
I keep thinking you're saying VIR.
No.
Yeah.
There are too many IRs out there.
All right. So, I keep thinking you're saying
Oh, it went away.
should come back in a second. Now, when you're watching this, about when it goes out about 100 miles an hour on the left side, you'll see the car jolt, and it's.
Oh,
Remember, this is a stabilized camera, by the way, so the fact that you can see it in the video is absolutely insane.
Right here.
So, I did a bunch of. So this was at Alpine.
Oh, yeah.
Horizons. Did you see that hop?
yeah.
Yeah. So that hop, it's terrifying, and I have not experienced anything at any track that's as terrifying as this. So I'm out here with a bunch of folks who have been here and have hundreds and hundreds of laps, and I've got like 20 now, and we're trying to compete with these folks. And I'm looking at the deltas on our data versus their data, and I'm about the guy who beat me. I'm several seconds faster than him in the infield, several seconds, but he is several seconds faster on the bank. So when I hit the bump, I'm doing about 101 miles an hour. He was doing 115.
Oh, wow.
On a street DOT tire in a Corvette. So it's absolutely amazing. A, I was able to make up all so much time in the infield, but to me, to realize how much more growing as a driver I have to do. To get to 101 miles an hour took me 6 sessions. I started at like 90-ish, got like 93, 96.
Yeah, dealing with that bump.
Just bringing it up. There's that bump again. But I guess what I was bringing up is 18 years later, I went to a new track and I learned something. Now, what I learned here, I'm going to be able to apply when I head down to Podium Club, because we have a bank that's similar to this. It's not quite as steep. It's about 7 degrees. But being comfortable with the whole car jumping while you're doing 100 just added a whole nother level of like, oh my god, in my head, like I can do that. I just learned something new. It was like a hop.
Yeah.
I literally wanted one more session. If I had one more session, I could have gotten the first place trophy. I was a second and a half off, and we calculated that every 3 miles an hour on the bank netted 1 full second on the lap time. If everything else.
Oh,
was the
wow.
same. So he was turning 14 miles an hour faster than me. So if I could have gone 6 miles an hour faster, I could have caught him. And that's like, dang,
Wow.
It took all this learning this entire time to figure that
Yeah.
out. So that was,
Listen to these West Coast guys having trouble with elevation.
that's not okay, it is elevation. Technically 3 inches is elevation. I don't know if I can call that elevation, Coyote. Elevation.
Oh, okay, well-
Road Atlanta is elevation.
You know, I will say, I had a learning experience, what was it? It was 2017 at Fontana.
On the bank there.
The Auto Club Speedway.
Were you doing infield or outfield? Or the big cars?
We were doing, it was NASCAR 1 and 2 and then infield. And so in NASCAR 1 and 2, in my CRX, I was able to be somewhere around 130. Like 100, it was like 130 to 135, somewhere in that range. Which was flat in 6th, and it would actually peak and hold myself at 130. It wouldn't go any faster. And that was the year that I got my big brakes. And I came around that corner at 130, and I was like, ooh, this is a good test of our brakes. and I hit the pedal, and now watching the video back and everything, I endoed from 130. And I have the video somewhere. Well, I'll have to find it for another live. But I have the video somewhere of me endoing, and then the car pitching one side, and I get off the brakes, and the back tires touch, and then it goes back and forth from 130 down to like 70.
That's awful. I didn't actually.
Oh,
I didn't explain too. The other reason we had a lot of trouble with this event is because so I don't know if you remember, I just put the wide body on the car, and I just spent 3 weeks doing suspension changes. Backwards up, I was going backwards with a lot of stuff because the old NA car, I ran a really heavy rear spring, and that's how I got the car to rotate. If I hit the gas, the car would rotate with a heavy spring. That's how I drove it. Well, now it makes way too much torque for that. It'll just light the rears up and spin the car. So, Tony Lisa, as you guys know, Tony Lisa, phenomenal driver. He's like, you got to back the spring down. I'm like, I completely forgot. So we went back to 1212 instead of 1216. That helped. And then I went from 295 to 315 in the back to give myself an inch more tire in the rear to get the bias back to where it used to be. So I did all those things, which made the car, it feels amazing. It hasn't felt so good in years. But the first session we went out, as soon as I turned left over the bump, the whole cabin filled with smoke. And I mean filled with smoke. And if you already know what that is, that's what happened is the tires had jammed, the front right tire was so far up into the wet fender liner, not the liner, the fender, that it was rubbing something. So I spent about half a day trying to figure out exactly what was rubbing. Because it doesn't take a lot of rubbing to create a large amount of smoke. So the tires actually didn't show.
not at 115.
Yeah, the tires didn't show actual any damage. We were just looking all over. We thought it was the rear fenders because I just changed the bigger rear tires. So we cut more of the rear fender out. So it's got to be rubbing here or something. It was the front tire. It was the front right tire. It was actually compressing so hard, it was rubbing the headlight bucket.
Oh.
Yes,
Crazy.
and I can't take
That's
that
impressive.
out because it's part of the car. It's
Yeah.
the bottom of the bucket is formed into the chassis. So, what do, right? You do what anybody would do to their NSX. You go grab a grinder and a flapper wheel, and you take off about
That's
centimeter worth
exactly
of
what I
material
was gonna say.
until the tire
Yep.
no longer rubs. So I'm sitting
All
there
right.
in the paddock, just this grinder going on this NSX, and just metal shooting everywhere. And I got my squinters on because Nick Steniford put in us some squinters and a goggles and a grinder and stuff. But it was literally, I've never thought I'd ever be cutting parts of my car off the track.
I want to tell everybody here who thinks they have a race car. I guarantee you, when Robbie saw that, there was no second thought in
Let's get
his
a grinder.
mind. It was literally, oh, cut that. If you can't do that with your car, it's not technically a race car.
Oh, there's no
My
headlights in there.
sponsorship
Let's get
proposal
those,
has
cut those
that.
puppies out of there. I'm like, I want a lap time, and I went. So this was the first time I've gone to any grid life event. So I wanted to check out the scene and check out how the folks are. 'Cause it's a different scenario than I'm used to. It's not NASA. It's a little different. It's more relaxed. It's nice. It's a festival. There's music. There's drifting. It's a big thing. So I was very happy that I was able to get a ticket. Unfortunately, one of my friends, Eric Dewey DeWitt, his Subaru broke. So he had to sell his ticket, so I bought his ticket, was able to go. I literally packed up, we left in a hurry. Thankfully, Adams Bay was able to accommodate us to get us in and everything and get us all situated. So, and also did something that I've never done before ever, Brandon, which is in a time attack event, I was in all 4 run groups from slowest to fastest in one weekend.
Oh?
Yeah,
Why?
all 4, because, and technically I was in A group twice. They actually threw me out in A group because they know I've done a lot of driving and I can be pretty quick. So in A group, the first session I went out, tire rubbed. I did a 107 and pulled off because the tire was rubbing. Did a 107 just cruising, but a 107 around that track is D group. So the next session out, I was in D group, but I fixed the fender. So all of a sudden, I'm in the Spec Miata group essentially. Like I'm all the cars that are doing 107s, 108s, 109s, 110s, slower cars. Hey, great, that's fine, whatever. But I'm in my head, I'm like, I have to actually get a lap time to get the heck out of this group. So I have to do a lap in traffic that's good enough to get me out of this group so I can go to the next group. And
Which in PT, that's not easy.
it's not, and since we're all put there by grid time, I was about 5th from the front. So, again, I wanted to bring up awareness of drivers and why it's really cool to drive with people who are aware. So the 5 cars in front of me were aware that I was out of position. I didn't have to tell them. They just knew that they're like, that car is going to go fast, so he's in the wrong group. So they pretty much just let me go by the first lap. They just opened up the gates and went. So I got 1 flyer, which was good for like a 104, which got me into C group then. And then
Okay.
in C group, I ended up in the middle of C group, and I just, again, managed some space, got another flyer in, 102. Then I got into B group, 101, and finally I'm in an area where now I'm getting like 3 and 4 laps per session. I'm not having to do like actual like time attack laps. And that brought me to that Sunday. They didn't actually televise Sunday, which I didn't know they didn't do. The last session they don't televise for some reason. But the last session on Sunday, which was the only session, I'd spent all night thinking about it and looking at data and thinking about what I could do better. And all I could think of was that bank. For the entire 8 hours of sleep, I'm thinking about that bank going, whenever your brain is telling you to slow down, just don't. Just squeeze the throttle a little harder because you know where all the time is. You've looked at all the deltas. You're losing boatloads of time there. At the current moment, at the end of Saturday, I was in 3rd place. The guy, Corey, was in front of me, Corey Ross in his BMW. He ran a 101.5. I ran a 101.666, and the guy behind me ran a 101.6 like 9, like a couple.
That's close.
So it was like whoever farted was going to get on the podium. But the thing is, I set my fastest time to date in the wet session already, so I knew there was more. They had set their fastest times in the dry session, so I'm like in my head, I'm like, there's no reason you can't kick them both back a position and jump in there and maybe go for that first place spot. And I went from 96 miles an hour on the bank to 101, and that was enough to hopscotch both of those competitors, and it dropped me a full second. Like I said, I needed to go about 106 on the straightaway, or on the back straight, to catch first place with the Corvette. But again, circling back to what I was talking about, is this entire time of 18 years of doing this, and I've been on banks before, I've been on Cal Speedway, I've done 160 on Cal Speedway, PIR was usually about 135 at the straightaway. And this track was more challenging than both of those because of that stupid bump that there's absolutely no way to prepare yourself for except for repetitive seat time, getting used to where it was, because you're not really looking at landmarks because you're trying to focus on where you're going and not crashing. And then secondly, getting used to trusting the car at much higher G-loads than I've been used to for years, you know? Oh, puppy! That's a puppy
Yep.
right there.
He's a thick boy.
So overall, Alpine Stars Horizon, you know, that was one of the most fun events I've ever had. I'm super happy they let me come out there. The track is relatively straightforward, but it's also relatively safe. There's not a lot to hit except for this turn coming up here and then the bank. And the drifting there was great. They did like nighttime drifting. There's quite a few vendors showed up. The music, it was for someone a lot younger than me, except for Taking Back Sunday. Taking Back Sunday.
I was gonna say Taking Back Sunday played. I wanted to fucking race that.
Really
Oh, I said it. I dropped an F.
Oh.
Damn it.
Brandon just lost $300.
Damn it.
No, there he is again. But it was a really cool event. I hope, like, I want to go back again next year. I have a lot of thoughts of how I want to approach it next year. But it was one of those events that for guys like us who are regional and it's not that far of a drive, it's really worth trying. Even if you just go to hang out and you're not driving, which that sounds terrible to me, honestly. I don't do that. Drive, you should definitely drive. It's a lot more fun to drive.
Yes. I will say next year I want to go to a grid life with you.
Yeah, we're gonna go to this one here. If you want to go, it was a cool little drive. I'm gonna put up a video later. Me and Don Brown went. Obviously, Don Brown drove with me, and then Dylan Wingo flew in. Usually helps with the boost and stuff. But we ended up just kind of, it was a casual weekend. I didn't have any responsibility, and we drove home through Durango. That is by far one of the best return trips I've ever had, with all the trees and the rivers and the mountains, and just absolutely insanity. We definitely had truck brake failure. They got really hot, so the brake fluid's getting upgraded to racing brake fluid in the truck, I think. I started having to downshift. The brake pedals started getting long and long. We weren't braking that hard, and I was using the decel descent and all that crap. Those are monstrous. There were some 8-9% grades. They were monstrous downhill. So I really hope one of you guys or both of you guys think about maybe attending that event or going to that event. And it's a very different thing than, like, say, Super Lap. I love Super Lap Battle, and it's a very different type of event, and I'm going to continue going to that one as well. But this one was more relaxing for me. Super Lap for me is actually more of a, I don't want to say job environment to me. It's I'm much more focused there. There's not as much relaxation in between times. And it's also different because in Super Lap Battle, I actually get to meet a lot more fans. I had a lot more interaction with people who are interested in the sport, and it was a lot of, I spent a lot of time talking to people. Grid Life, I pretty much everyone there knew who I was, and they were either already customers or they weren't so many guests, I guess you might say. It was mostly people that were already in the industry and already involved in motorsports. I knew a couple hundred people that were there, which is incredible. Which random people, I saw a couple random We Don't Lift shirts walking through the paddock. I'm like, oh, I don't even know who you are. That's cool. And a couple,
Yeah, that's always good
Andy
feeling.
Hope came up to me and said, thanks for doing what you guys do and promoting safety here and actually explaining it and not just selling it. I'm like, yeah, explanations. The reason to buy stuff is with a good explanation, you know. But yeah, it is a lot different. I don't think for me the events will replace other events that are more serious towards timing. And I said Super Lap is more introductive. We have so many more spectators who come to Super Lap for the racing, as opposed to Grid Life. It's a festival. There's music and other stuff. It's entertainment. So they're not necessarily coming there to watch the racing. They're just there to watch the environment. So very different customer base, and both very cool. And I hope people who are out there will actually try both of them. Go to Super Lap, go to Grid Life. They're both awesome. And I hope to see them keep growing, because honestly, for grassroots motorsports, you can't have enough of these type of events that are fairly easy to get into in terms of spectators and as drivers as well.
And so, as to bring a wrap up, because we are at our hour, the thing that we have to do if we want to drive is just go.
Right.
Doesn't matter what you bring. Doesn't matter what kind of safety equipment. I know we didn't get into the actual tiers of safety equipment, but I will say it gets very expensive as you go on with safety equipment. Or you could just go out with a stock car and you're safe enough as long as you have all of the stuff.
Stock Mini Cooper, just rent it, whatever. Get your DE days under your belt. Decide what you want to do from there. Don't just go out and buy a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 track car. Just find something that's basic and get used to it, because that first car, it may not make it that long. Let's be honest. There's a good chance that it may not exist as a car in a couple of years.
Yeah. But I also wanted to thank Jeff, Coyote, and Daniel.
Yes.
Everyone that joined. You guys were great inputs on this subject, and I know we'll probably have you guys another time in the future.
Yeah, most of this is still a learning thing for us. This is only episode 4. We plan on saying it's every Tuesday. It's technically 3.5, I guess, technically, but we'll call it 4.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing this every Tuesday at 6. Obviously, if you want to do this more often with us, you're welcome to. As you see, just having a space that's quiet, having a good microphone, good internet, it's all we need, it's all we ask for. You know, if you are just here to listen in or you want to contribute, that's fine too. Jump on the chat. Everybody who's been watching, thank you for watching. We really appreciate you guys. We actually had more people watching this time than we've had in the past, so that was cool on both channels. Actually, mine perked up for some reason. It had double what it did last time.
Ooh.
Yeah, and we'd love to have people be more interactive in the chat in the future. You guys are welcome to ask questions. Like I said, we'll review them later, check them out, come back to you next time. And if you have anything you want us to cover, please let us know.
Yeah, actually, this topic today's whole video was because of someone's comment after the fact.
Right. Just once again, thanks guys for joining. So Daniel from formerly from S's, now from Wilson Tuning. Appreciate you stopping by. Jeff, he's been are you a series director at NASA? Is that what you are? Or the race director?
No, at this point, I am just a racer. I am completely unhindered by any sort of responsibility.
Oh, that's nice.
That's nice.
Can I trade you?
Hey, come over to our side. There's plenty of beer and not a lot of responsibility.
There you go. And then Coyote up top, a friend and also a racer. We've never raced together, but we've been friends for I think about 4 years now, and driving the U.S. touring car stuff, and that's super awesome watching him progress over the years into something new every time. We'll keep track with you and have you come back on and show us about your new project. If you want to send us videos and all that stuff, we can get it put on the screen just like this guy.
Sure.
And then obviously Brandon from U-Wrench, our staple host, and myself from WDL. We really appreciate you guys coming on. And we'll see you guys next time, all right?
Adios.
We have an ending screen, don't we?
I can put an ending screen up. It's probably the same screen as the beginning screen, but that's
fine. At least we know it'll end and we don't cut it off.
We'll know it'll end. Let's throw that up there, and it's a false flag, guys. We're not going back to 6 because it's not 6 anymore. Thanks so much for watching.
Everyone have a good night.
Take care, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.